one thing's guaranteed at a conference like uLearn is the presence of educational buzzwords. Here's an image from uLearn 1938. People play buzzword bingo. But I think buzzwords often come about when we're thinking about the kind of learners we want to produce. And a lot of schools go down the road of producing the word I'm looking for is graduate profiles. And we brainstorm the concepts like these. Risk-taking, self-directed, in control, visionary, and so forth. This is what we wish for our learners, but we need to be careful what we wish for because a lot of these words apply to this guy. He's certainly connected, perhaps a little more than we'd like. He's a communicator of sorts. He's a risk-taker without doubt, and he certainly wants to change the world. But we see the result on our TV screens every night. We see fragmentation, we see opposition, we see othering on a grand scale. And I think this happens when the buzzwords, those great things we want from our learners, become divorced from the values that underlie our humanity, and our empathy and compassion and manaakitanga, kotahitanga, whanaungatanga. In a word, it's love. And I think this is where digital technology can really be harnessed, not to dehumanise the other, but to rehumanise the other. So where do we get permission to do this? It's in our very own curriculum, in black and white. And there we have those values. Diversity in our different languages and heritages and cultures. We have equity as it relates to fairness and social justice, and community and participation for the common good. Now, we hear about this all the time. SAMR, it's a guide as to how we might use technology, and of course we all know the R is the holy grail that we're all going for, redefinition. But I think even more than redefinition, that R can stand for reconnection and for rehumanisation, and that's really what we need to go for. Now, this is a story I want to share with you. Newspaper article last year, a student who was in my class, way back in 2009, and she describes in the article a pivot in her life when we were studying child labour back then, and it really changed the course of everything that she's done since. So I invited her to come and talk to our learners last year about child labour, and it re-inspired us. And we learned that for $150 you could set a child labourer free. Aww. And so we went out into the streets with a 150 link metal chain, and we invited members of the public to break the chain with bolt cutters for a gold coin donation. And we raised about $2,000 in a single morning. And that's part of what's inspired my e-fellowship this year, which is looking at the power of global connection to activate students' sense of agency and being able to make a difference. This year our focus was on water justice, and we learned that 600 million people don't have access to clean water. And having learned all about this, it was an absolute joy then to take the learners out onto the streets again and see them articulating their learning passionately with members of the public. And as they were doing that, they knew exactly who they were raising that money for. And that was a small community in rural Kenya that we'd previously connected with. Kimilili is the name of the town. And the money we raised, it was $1,300 that day, was used to provide bucket filters, providing drinkable water for a community that previously had very little. And so it was an authentic context meeting a genuine need. And the very next day, after we went out into the streets and did all that, we got these images from that village in Kenya with these children holding up posters addressed to our learners saying, hey, thanks, and we appreciate what you've done. And that really hit home to the students big time and motivated their learning. So the concept of droplets became very important to us. Not just because we're studying water, but also because as children they can feel small and they can feel insignificant. But do any of us doubt the power of droplets when they're combined together to create a potential tsunami of empathy and compassion? And that's the value of connection. When we make connections beyond ourselves, I believe we also make connections within ourselves and to our place in the world and our relationship to it. And I think when we put those connections side by side with the values we were talking about earlier, then the sky's the limit in terms of the potential. Student agency is definitely one of the buzzwords we hear a lot, and so we should. But But what does it mean? Because I think if it merely means a child deciding when to do maths and when to sit, I think we're selling ourselves short. But I think real student agency, when it's seen in a global perspective and with values right in behind it, has tremendous power. The old models of education seem set on a pathway to producing university professors. Sometimes I wonder if education these days, we're trying to channel children down a path to be Silicon Valley startup entrepreneurs. And we need to ask ourselves, should that be just our goal? Future-focused learning, I believe, must be based on values. And I think that the future depends not only on whether our kids can code and app smash and launch companies and so forth, but whether they can look at the world and imagine it better. And have not only the skills, but also the values to make that happen. So we've got a lot of power as teachers, and I often think of our classrooms as the seed pods of the future. And to plant a seed, I think, is an act of hope. And every time we go into the classroom, we need to take that attitude of hope with us for what our children are going to be. So during uLearn, in amongst all the buzzwords and the bells and the whistles, we need to just keep in mind, I think, what our mission really is. And I've often thought that the E in e-learning should perhaps stand for empathy and the recognition that there is no other, there's just sister and brother, and that as teachers we have a real power to redefine, to reconnect and to rehumanise. Have a good conference.